There was a boy named Matthew who was 14 years old. It was his father's birthday and he wanted to buy him something nice. Unfortunately, he didn't have very much money, so he decided to go to a flea market. Browsing through the stalls and car boot sales, he spotted a camera. He remembered that his father always wanted one, so he picked it up and took a look at it. The camera was a bit old and there were scratches and scuff marks on the outside, but when he looked through the viewfinder, everything was clear. Even though it was second-hand, it seemed to be in good condition. To see if it worked, he took a picture of a large mirror that was propped up against a nearby table. He asked the seller how much he wanted for it. The price was a lot cheaper than he expected, so he immediately handed over the cash and bought it. As he was leaving, the seller mentioned that the camera had once belonged to 4 college students who had mysteriously disappeared. When he heard this, Matthew was a little unnerved. All of a sudden, he heard the sound of breaking glass. When he spun around, he saw the mirror he had taken a picture of had just fallen over and shattered into tiny pieces. That evening, Matthew, his mother, and his little brother waited anxiously for his father to come home from work. As soon as he opened the front door, they shouted, "Happy birthday!" and started giving him their gifts. The camera was exactly what his father had wanted. He went out to the garden to test out the camera and took a picture of a tree and the family dog. A few hours later, the tree withered and died. The family dog ran out in front of a car and was killed. Saddened by these events, Matthew sat alone in the garden and examined up the camera. He discovered that there were other photos saved in the memory. He found pictures that the 4 students had taken of themselves before the disappearance. That was when he finally figured it out. The camera was cursed. He had to tell his parents. He dropped the camera on the grass and ran inside the house. "Dad, Dad, the camera's cursed," he cried. "Whatever it takes a picture of gets destroyed or dies." They raced out to the garden again, and Matthew was horrified to see his little brother playing with the camera. Quickly, he ran over and snatched it out of the little boy's hands. "Did you take any pictures?" Matthew demanded. "Yeah, why?" his brother replied. Matthew's heart sank. "What did you take a picture of?" he asked. "I took a picture of the sun," said his brother. "Cool, right?" Just then, it started to grow very dark. For most of my life, I've had a strange recurring dream. It started when I was only 8 or 9 years old, and I still have the dream today. It's always the same, but some details are different every time. In the dream, I find myself in a large, dark house, walking up a long set of stairs. The walls are all white and the carpet is pitch black. There is a clock on the wall and I can see that it's close to midnight. The whole house seems to be deserted and everything is deathly silent. At the top of the stairs, I walk through a massive mahogany door and find myself in a huge, dimly lit room. The room is full of people sitting in rows. Their chairs are all facing a stage. There is a person on the stage sitting in a red leather armchair, and the audience are watching intently. The person on the stage seems to be speaking in a low voice, but from where I'm standing, I can't hear what they are saying. Each time I have the dream, there is a different person on the stage. There are never enough chairs for everyone in the audience, and those who come late, like me, have to stand up in the back. Sometimes a vacant chair appears near the front. It's always a mystery how this happens because no one ever seems to leave. Whenever the vacant chair appears, the people standing at the back argue over who should take it. "You go ahead," says one. "Oh no, that's all right," says another. "You have it." They often insist that I take the vacant chair, but something has always told me not to do it. Aren't you gonna sit down? They ask. I always shake my head and let someone else have the vacant chair. One night I recognized the person on the platform. It was a man who I knew very well. The next morning I called him at work and his secretary answered. I told her I wanted to make an appointment to meet the man. I'm afraid you can't, she replied. He passed away. His wife found him dead in his bed this morning. Not long after that, I had the dream again, and I saw another man on the stage who I knew. It was my next-door neighbor. He seemed to recognize me too because he nodded at me. The next morning I called around to his house, but when I knocked on the door, there was no answer. I banged and banged on the door, but there was no sign of life. After a while, I became worried and called the police. When they came and broke the door down, they found my neighbor dead in his bed. He died in his sleep of a sudden heart attack, they said. I don't know if it was just a coincidence that I dreamed about these two unfortunate people, and they happened to die in exactly the same way, but now, every time I dream the dream, and I notice a vacant chair, I always let someone else sit down instead of me. Do you ever get that nagging feeling that you've forgotten something? You know that feeling when you've left something behind, but you can't remember what it was. It was just after 6 when I left the office and walked to the bus stop. As I stood there waiting for the bus to arrive, I had a strange sense of unease. I felt as if I had left something important behind, but I couldn't think of what it was. Maybe it's nothing, I tried to assure myself, but something was nagging at me. I felt like going back to check, but I was too tired. I just wanted to get home. When the bus came, I piled in with the other passengers. As usual, all the seats were taken. I clung to the handrail as the bus lurched back and forth. I bumped into the man behind me and said, "I'm sorry," but he just looked away. More and more, I felt that I had left something important at the office. The farther the bus carried me from the office, the more certain I became of it. I went over the day in my mind. I thought about my creepy boss staring at me all day. I thought about the other secretaries gossiping about how he had a crush on me. I thought about the letters he told me to post. Had I forgotten them? Of course not. I thought about the meetings I had to schedule. Had I scheduled them? Of course I did. I racked my brain for some clue as to what I had forgotten. I told myself that I would feel better when I got home. The uneasy feeling wouldn't leave me. I got off the bus at my usual stop, but when I came to the lane that led to my house, I finally gave in. It's no use, I thought. This will be nagging at me all night. I have to go back to the office and see what it was that I overlooked. As tired as I was, I made my way back to the bus stop, back to the office. I was just doing this to put my mind at ease. As I got off the bus, I heard the clock strike 7. I walked quickly up the side street to the office and turned the key in the door. Quickly, I ran up the stairs. When I opened the office door, I suddenly stopped in my tracks. To my horror, I recognized what it was I had left behind. It was me. My body was laying strangled on the floor. One night, a teenage girl went to a nightclub with her friends. They had a great time, drinking and dancing, and it was 3 a.m. by the time they left. Her friends lived in the city, but the girl lived in the suburbs. They said goodbye and went back to their apartment, leaving the girl to make her own way home. Unable to get a taxi, the teenage girl decided to walk home on her own. On the way, she had to cross through a park. It was very dark, and all she could hear was the clacking of her heels echoing in the night. She thought she saw something moving in the bushes, so she quickened her pace. Suddenly, a man appeared from behind a bush and blocked her path. His face was hideous. It looked terribly scarred and misshapen. She tried to run, but he cornered her and grabbed hold of her arms. The frightened girl pleaded for her life and tearfully asked to be let go. The man's deformed mouth twisted into a leering grin. "Do you want death or Smiley Face?" he asked. "Please, just let me go," she cried. "Death or Smiley Face?" he insisted. The girl didn't know what he meant. "Smiley Face," she replied. Without a word, he pulled out a knife and sliced the corners of the girl's mouth up to her ears. Her face was left completely deformed. She was scarred for life. Whenever people saw her in public, they said she resembled a grotesque smiley face. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. If you'd like to, you can follow me at Twitter. The handle is @FuzzyPantaloons, and I'll see you all next time.